Welcome to the WP SEO Show, brought to you by SEO Hive, your proactive white label SEO partner. The WP SEO Show is all about talking WordPress and SEO, from optimizations, structures, setups, and plugins. We explore how to make your WordPress website perform better in the search engines. Here are your hosts, Pete Everett and Jeff Patch.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the WP SEO Show. I am your co-host Pete, and I'm joined by my co-host Jeff, all the way from California. How are you doing?
Well, howdy, Pete. I've been doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Sounds like you're rootin' and tootin'.
I mean, if you got that cool British accent, I guess I should try to find one, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose you should try. I mean,
I tried. We're done with that one.
So, it feels like it's been a while since we last recorded something. So, how's life?
Yeah,
how's
I don't think it's been that long, but like it's at the time of the year where the seasons are changing, and they do like change from, like hot to like not quite so hot here in California. But like it's actually been cold this week, so I feel like it's a whole nother season. It's like, even though it's only been a little while, it feels like it's been months at the same time. So it's very weird, very weird.
So I'm just going to have to do the conversion on this quickly. But as I walked up to the cabin to do this recording, it was -1 degree centigrade. So that is 29.3 degrees Fahrenheit for all you Americans. I don't think you're
not
that cold.
Quite. We've been down to about 40, so a little bit above freezing, but that's about as cold as it'll ever get here. But yeah, it's it's that time of year. It's like almost like Christmas is coming or something. I hear the sleigh bells. Can you put the sleigh bells and Santa flying across the video for us, please?
I don't have that as a sound effect, I'm afraid. I've got ballpark, and I've got a small cheer, and that's all I've got. Yeah.
We will never play that cheer again. We're very sorry to everybody who's listening. That was painful in my ears. And I do have to say, a little housekeeping here. I have a browser tab that keeps making a sound that is driving me nuts, and I can't find it. So like, if I'm looking around today on this video, or if I might lose my train of thought, you know what? We're just rolling with it. We're just rolling with it. If Joe Rogan can have 3-hour podcasts, people can deal with us, having a couple of these on our 30-40 minute podcast, right?
Absolutely. And if only Joe Rogan had the listenership that we do, I mean, that would be, the download numbers. He'd be absolutely
that might
flying.
be a good thing, but I'm going to go ahead and end that thought there.
So anyway, if we have any listeners left, today we're talking about, can you do SEO on a shoestring, on a bit of a budget? And the short answer to that is absolutely.
Sure.
And
thanks for listening, everybody.
And that wraps it up, though. See you next week. We wanted to take a bit of time. We're fully aware that a number of agencies that come to us, investing in SEO, particularly when you're getting outsourced help in, isn't always the cheapest thing to do. And there are absolutely some easy, fundamental sort of grassroots level things that anybody can do. You don't need like a master's in SEO, or you don't need to, it's just about getting the basics right. And, whether you want to bake those into a care plan or a website build, or, just a low level offering, a lower price offering, I should say, for websites that come your way, then that's absolutely fine. And that's kind of what we're going to bounce around today.
Yeah, it's all relative. There's a balance to it. I think at a bare minimum, whether you want to consider it low budget or whatever, assuming that you or your agency, your team is building a website, signing up a client for a care plan, there's a lot of things, and we've talked about them over and over again on the show, but there's a lot of things that you can bake into that process that don't really cost you anything other than a little bit of time and a little bit of thinking. And in my opinion, they need to be done when you build a website. Like, I almost feel like it's irresponsible, and I don't want to insult anybody who might be doing this, but I almost feel like it's irresponsible for you to just build a website and throw it out there and not do any of this stuff. And then when they go, hey, why isn't anybody finding me? Or, I just got an email from some SEO guy who said my SEO is trash. And then you go, well, that's because you didn't pay for SEO. I mean, that's just bad. I would never say that. It feels so gross if I said that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't go and buy a new car only to find out that it doesn't have an engine in it, or it's not, it's only got a very underpowered engine for the model you thought it was, or whatever it is. It's, you wouldn't stand for that. Or if buying cars and building houses seem to be the two comparisons that we get with SEO quite a lot, or website building. And if you're having an extension built and then all of a sudden the builder said, yeah, well, it doesn't matter if the window doesn't fit that hole properly, you wouldn't be too happy with it. And it's exactly the same with building a website. I'm not going to get on my soapbox, which I have done in previous episodes, but let's just say, you are the web professional in this deal. It's up to you to make sure that the website that you're producing is better than and more fit for purpose than the website it's replacing. Otherwise, what's the point in doing the project?
Yeah. And if it's a new one, help them get started. Sign their
Absolutely.
website up for Search Console.
So there's two parts to this, I think, that we're going to cover in this episode. The first part is a little bit more of kind of the practical stuff, I guess, that you can do. I'm sure we'll mention some tools, and we'll mention some tips and some sort of areas that you should cover. And then the second part is we do have some advice that we give to people who want to start SEO but can't afford it. So we'll run through that as kind of like phase 2, if you like. So let's dive in. I mean, for me, the first things that are obvious are things like page structure, on-page SEO, making sure the tools are there, and site speed. I don't know. Have you got anything else? We'll go into those in a little more detail. But you got any more on those?
I think that's a great list to start with.
Okay, now I've just got to remember it. So let's do them in reverse order. So site speed, right? So this is more your bag than mine. So
I thought we weren't going to let me go off on a site speed rant today, but that's okay. No,
I circumnavigated the whole duty bound thing.
Yeah.
So I've thrown the ball.
This is interesting, and it's not an interesting one. It's kind of a boring one, and I can't believe it's one that we still have to talk about so often. But my goodness, we do. Look. Site speed is not the end all be all to SEO success. In fact, I'd argue it's probably the lowest, on that list, but it is that tiebreaker one when it comes to your competitors. So if you've got a website that's loading in 10 seconds and the nearest competitor that for all other purposes are equal, there's a loading in 2 seconds, it's going to win, right? That's going to win when it's coming to that neck and neck race on Google. The worst part about those things really is the user's ability to load the website. Like, if they're loading in 20 seconds, but it is, appeasing some scores, you're going to have people just leaving the website. So it's, who are you really optimizing it for? You're optimizing it for humans, or you're optimizing it for search engines. So I've seen some people where they go to town to optimize a website for the search engines, and all they have done is make it unusable, or they've used so many tools and page builders and things that now all the effects are baking onto each other, and it's just crashing down, and it's just such a nightmare. So I just kind of keep recommending people to build with the basics, stop getting too fancy. Not everything doesn't need to be flashing and having animations and all that stuff. You can, if there's purpose to it, go for it, and you're prepared to deal with optimizing those things, then do it. But most of the time I see people building things with modern tools and just throwing them out there, and they're loading fine. It's when they're using big page builders, or they're embedding all kinds of third-party tools and all kinds of scripts and stuff, and it just becomes an absolute nightmare. And it's I don't want to lose too much sleep over it. You know what I mean? If you're getting like a C or a B, you're probably fine. But if it's an F and you're doing all these things, you need to look at your stack and figure out what you're doing to make these websites perform so poorly.
Yeah, I gotta say, this is one of the really hard sort of downsides with the WordPress ecosystem, and particularly the plugin repository. I mean, in theory, you could build a site by adding one plugin for every function that you needed, and just racking up hundreds of plugins in your install. The code, actually written code, is always going to load quicker than a plugin that works on a call, that works on another database to look up, that works on whatever. So it essentially here you've got to be really careful that you're not kind of overdeveloping websites beyond what's kind of reasonable. I mean, I guess I don't really want to give a number as to how many plugins we kind of average have on a website.
It's very arbitrary
but,
depending on so many things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But then on the same note, if you're adding a plugin in just to get a slider to work, or just to do a particular animation, or just to put a filter on something else, then that's kind of a friend of mine has this expression about the tail wagging the dog. It's the wrong way round. So just don't. Depending on what it is you're doing, try to make sure you're not stacking up needless plugins just for tiny little animations or tiny little bits of functionality. And if you don't know how to code those things yourself, then that's fine. Maybe the project doesn't need it. I mean, that's perfectly viable option. I find that a lot of developers, a lot of agencies put stuff on websites that clients love in the end, but actually they only love it because they saw it in the first place. If you'd never shown it to them, they would have loved it just as much. So that's you've got to take some of that into account. And also knowing how to use those tools properly. We have mentioned in the past about the difference between like theme layouts and page layouts in page builders. And all of that stuff can have a dramatic effect on SEO from a speed perspective, because most page builders bake this stuff into the database. And whilst servers can read databases quite quickly, the more over bloated that becomes, because the more stuff you're stuffing in there, the slower it's going to be. It's just logic. That's kind of the way it works. So yeah, being conservative is always going to help you in this scenario. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say.
It's you mentioned the plugins, and we've got sites with 60, 70 plugins, which sounds insane, but that's because a lot of them are modular, right? They're little tiny plugins that, like you mentioned, installing one to add a new feature. Well, that's how some of these plugins or some of these systems work. Like, your theme might have, instead of giving you all of the options built into the theme itself, you add a little plugin. Well, that's adding a little bit of code, but it also saved a ton of code from the theme. So it balances out, you know what I mean? Like, so the number of plugins isn't always necessarily just based on the numbers, and always necessarily bad. It's more of what they are and what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, if you have a plugin that's from your theme developer or from your page builder developer, that's likely going to work quite well with the stack that you've got going. If, however, you just go and pick any random plugin out there, and because that's the other thing, you can end up with code bases from 30 or 40 different developers all within your website if you've just got random plugins that are completely unrelated to each other. So you've just got to be, as I say, less is more. That's all we're saying. A bit of conservatism, a little bit of a rationale about, is this really necessary? Or, hey, could I just learn this? Not everybody's got the time to do that, but ultimately, building a website, basing it all on plugins, that's not really building a website. You're certainly not one that somebody's paying for, in my opinion. Anyway, I'll get shut down for that. But
Pete, you know how I feel about like WordPress themes and the block editor lately. I love the block editor. Not everybody does. I love it. But here's the thing. Since we have switched over to just doing everything with the block editor, and we do use like a couple add-on plugins here and there and stuff like that. It's not just the basic no-frills blocks that come with WordPress these days. But since we've been doing that, I mean, I'm telling you, we barely have to optimize the site anymore. I mean, it's just... Like, I launched a site for a local company, some friends of mine, last 2 weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah, you sent me this on a Saturday morning. Or Sunday. You sent me a screenshot. I
literally built this thing in like an hour before going over there. And so here you go. And I literally slapped this thing together. And it's 99% on GT metrics and all the page speed scores. It has a huge Google map embedded in the footer. It has an image slider, which, these are things that I keep recommending. Don't put that on there if you're concerned about speed. The code for all these is just fantastic. And that's just that I'm seeing that with block themes. Not all of them, obviously. There's too many to say that's a blatant, whatever, that's a blanket statement. But I'm seeing that more often, that these themes are just working with WordPress and not trying to reinvent the wheel. And as much as I've loved page builders over the years, including, ones like Beaver Builder that are a little more on the lightweight side, they still just add a lot more that you don't need. And if you can build without them, then do it. You'll be happier. I can assure you that.
there's been so many memes about the amount of code that are injected and the number of divs and whatever that are injected by page builders. It's hilarious.
And that's,
but anyway,
well,
right.
sorry,
So
on that note, that's one thing I hear from some SEO people we work with. They go, "Hey, can we lower the number of like DOM windows or whatever?" I'm like, "No, that's how the theme builder or the page builder built it. That's what you guys wanted to use. This is the code we get." Is it perfect? No, but it works to do its purpose. So you've got to balance the pros and the cons. And honestly, we've probably talked longer about this than is even worth worrying about in most cases. But it's just the things you got to think about and make decisions for.
So that's the first thing. The other thing that I think is important to mention on site speed is making sure that you have things like caching and image optimization set up properly. And again, you only have to do this once when you launch a site, or if you inherit a site, do it as one pass. We generally tend to use WP Rocket if there isn't another caching plugin in there. I do a lot of hosting on Cloudways. They have their Breeze plugin, which also works really well. And I know I'm more of a fan of this than you, but I do enjoy putting perf matters on a site as well. I think that really does, help boost things quite substantially.
Yeah,
too.
well, I wouldn't say it's not a fan of it. It's that some people tend to go a little too crazy with that. And it's like, let's look at WP Rocket, which has, if you look through all of the panels, there's maybe like 15 options that you can click. Everybody breaks every website by clicking all those various options. And then perf matters let you do that like times 100. So I'm just uncomfortable leaving something in there where people go crazy. And we just, as a white label provider, we have so many different hands in there that it drives me nuts. And as soon as you exclude that JavaScript file, you find out the contact form's not loading or something like that. So they're great. Perf Matters is awesome. I love it. Highly recommend it. But it's one of those things like, if you're going to put it in there, know what you're doing and make sure other people aren't going to be doing anything with that.
Yeah, that's a fair warning in there. And there's a whole load of options for image compression as well. I personally use I think that's how it's called, ewww.io is the address. And they have a CDN network that goes with that as well. Again, all for site speed, all just to speed stuff up. Full transparency, don't use any of that in development or in staging. That only gets applied post live or to a live website, and then of course we do the appropriate checks thereafter. So that's the site speed side of things. I think sorted out. What was the next one? Site structure.
I was going to say, I hope you remember because I forgot.
So site structure. Basically, look, you need to make sure that. Firstly, you need to make sure that your permalinks are set up correctly. For most cases, that means that you normally go and knock it into post name, or you go and put category /post name. And if you have WooCommerce or something in there, you're removing the appropriate URLs, category URLs and stuff. There's options. If you install WooCommerce, the options appear. So yeah, that's the first thing. But then more than that is actually thinking about how the content of the website is kind of nested together. And this is one of the big things I come across when I'm running SEO audits for people, which is essentially they have what's basically like a flat website structure. So they have the homepage at the top, and then every other page is the direct descendant, the direct child of the homepage. So everything is domain.com / and then the slug of that page. There's no nesting of pages into little sort of family trees within to build up pockets of authority.
And that's fine for like the basics, right? For like your about page, your contact, that's for the basics. But you're probably doing a little bit more than those pages on most site builds.
Well, that's it. And for your main main pillar pages as well. So let's bring back Bob the plumber. He hasn't been mentioned for a week or two, I don't think. But he's not going to have a massive website. But you know what? Bob the plumber might do. He might do boiler services, boiler installations, boiler servicing, boiler repairs. He also might do, like bathroom fitting and kitchen fitting and first fix and second fix plumbing. He also might do, like leak finding, and he also might do drainage. So let's say that he's got 3 or 4 key things he does in those areas. So within boiler installation, there could be, as I say, boiler servicing, boiler repairs, emergency boiler callouts, and whatever. So in order to give Bob the plumber a bit of authority about boilers, you should have a boiler services page as like the pillar page at the top. Now that pillar page will have it'll have a little overview about all of the sub pages that are going to be in it, but it won't go into any kind of detailed depth about any specific. The purpose of a pillar page is to show the breadth of your knowledge about a particular subject. And then you'll have sub pages to that pillar page called cluster pages. And the purpose of those cluster pages is to take one of those things from the pillar page and then go a mile deep into it. Literally like you're teaching your granny to suck eggs about whatever that particular topic is. And that will then sit as a child page to boilers. So you'd have domain.com/boilers/boiler repairs, for example. And that's the page that you're going in all about boiler repairs. And likewise, you're going to do that for each of the subsets of boilers. So that would instantly take your, like I say, like a flat structure and create it into a 3D structure, basically. You would then have various layers of content grouped together by pillar pages at the top and then cluster pages underneath. Now, if you're in a more complicated website, we're not talking Bob the Plumber now. We're talking about, some big national organization. They may have sub pillars. So a pillar may have pillars within it, and then the cluster pages come down. So you end up adding multiple layers of this. But just to keep it simple for a podcast and what we can do with audio only, hopefully I'm sort of illustrating how that works. And likewise, that'll be the same cluster for boilers and boiler repairs as it would be for drainage, as it would be for bathroom installations and kitchen installations or building services, or you might have commercial plumbing, and that could be a whole different thing as well. So that's you can structure the site in that way. Even if it's a website that you're inheriting, you can look at that and you can see where the gaps are going to be. You can sort of figure it out. Okay, so if we move this here and move that there and where do the holes appear and what's the new content that needs to be written. And even if that content that's on that page isn't like fully SEO optimized, even if the client has written it, it's better to have the structure in place so that the URLs are indexed, so that when a client gets to a point that maybe they can afford some SEO, the SEO has the framework in place to start building from. So yeah, that would be what I'd mean by site structure.
And potentially, you mentioned inheriting a site, potentially reorganizing that stuff in a, I don't want to say the proper, but a better manner without even revamping the content can be very powerful. I mean, set up a couple redirects, make sure you don't break any links, but starting to put that in the right pillars or categories or however you want to frame it, that can be a nice quick win on a newly inherited, previously built website.
Now, the one thing to mention about pillar and cluster pages is that the pillar page, well, like I've said, there should be like an overview of each part of the cluster that's underneath. And likewise, there should be a link that goes back from the pillar page down to the cluster page so that you're forming the tree there. And likewise, each cluster page should end up pointing back to the pillar page. So the pillar page is going to have a whole ton of internal links coming back to it by the time you're done with this process. But that's kind of the point. So you're nesting them and you're creating internal links, and that makes the SEO juice flow, basically.
The SEO juice to flow.
If I just really use the words SEO
and
juice
flow.
And flow, dear me. Right,
Trigger warnings.
There's the complaints coming in. If we haven't offended anybody yet, we certainly have now. Right, so then we've got site structure. What was the other thing?
Yep, there was.
I think the next one was page structure, which is, page structure is about generally getting your making sure that things are in the right order on the page. We kind of touched on this a little bit with the page speed thing about the number of divs and whatever, but making sure things like the appropriate schemas in place, making sure that your heading tags are being used appropriately, making sure there's only one H1 on the page with the main keyword in it, and making sure that each section starts with an H2 and then subsections of that start with H3s and so on and so forth. Please don't use, you know how there's this sort of design style now where you have like your main heading and then just above it you have like a typeset of the heading, like a subhead that's above. Don't use an H tag for the subheading, right? So if your main heading tag is boiler services and that's the H1, don't have like an H4 or an H5 above it just to get the styling right. Okay. H tags aren't there for styling purposes. They're there to indicate page structure. So, set up a span, set up a div, set up a paragraph, set up whatever you want and give it a class name and style it the way you want to. But don't use, I'm now a hobby horse. Don't use heading tags for those subheadings.
So the real thing, or real important thing here, is that before we release this episode, we better go check our website. and I mean, tell you why. And
FYI, Jeff built it.
I'll tell you why. And I'm not gonna lie, there might be one or two there. Hopefully not by the time this podcast releases. But I see this so often with I don't want to say just page builders, but with the pre-built layouts that tend to come with them. And these are in, block editor thing. Like Cadence has a bunch of pre-built templates still. Theirs seem to be a little bit better from what I've noticed. But oh my goodness, this is one of the most common things I see whenever you go, oh, let me install this starter site or this page template or whatever. And then you take it and you make it, fill in your client stuff and it's awesome. They look great. They usually are really nice. But yes, so often they use H1 or H tags all over the place just based on like the size of the text they're wanting. And that's not the point of them. Right.
That's not the point.
You should look at H tags as stylish. Take all the style off the page and then read it and see how it makes sense. And if you've got, a big fat heading at the top that says, the best, I'm not even going to think of an example right now because it's going to be stupid, but you'll quickly see what we're talking about. Go through all of those, change those to, like Pete said, a P tag, a span. It doesn't really matter as long as it's not an H tag all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Kyle Van Dusen and I actually did a workshop on the proper structure of pages and how to use headings and stuff in the admin bar. This was about a year ago. Kyle set up some pages where he used the headings incorrectly, and he also found a Chrome plugin, free Chrome plugin that you can put in, which will just expose the heading structure so you can see how the page structure looks. Go and check that out on some sites, and particularly sites of your clients and stuff you've built, and see if they have any, just see what it looks like. It's dead easy to tell if it's wrong. Right, that's the thing, because ultimately what you're doing with that is you're passing the incorrect structure of the page to Google, and you know what? Google isn't going to do you any favors if it doesn't understand it. It'll get indexed. It's that simple.
You mentioned a Chrome extension. I don't know which one that one is, but I use one called let me check. Meta SEO Inspector. It's a Chrome extension. It's free, nothing too fancy. And any page you're looking at, you just click it, and it gives you way more info than you probably want. But you can just scroll, and it'll show you the heading tag breakdown. And so, like, even right now, I mean, we're using Zencaster, this program to record and stuff in browser. Obviously, this is never going to get indexed by a search engine, but I can see right here in a real big red warning, line that there's no H1 tag on this podcast recording website that we're using. And that's okay for this, but that's a good example of how easy it is to just click one little button. You scroll down and you go, oh, we forgot that H1 tag, or, oh, we've got 7 H1 tags in the footer. Like, why would we ever do that? I've seen like all of the page links in the bottom and they as H1 tags or H whatevers. And it's just like, what a mess. What a mess.
Absolutely. So just to give another shout out, I'm a Firefox user normally. I have to lower myself to using Chrome to record these podcasts, obviously. But I have an extension in Firefox called Headings Map, which does exactly the same thing, and works all the time. So that's make sure your page structure is correct, as well as your site structure, as well as your page speed. And look, if anything we've spoken about you're unsure about, or you want to get some more information on, SEO Hive, we offer tech audits on their own. They're $47, and we'll send you a PDF and a link to all of this stuff so you can see how a site's performing. Or we do Scout reports at 97, which have that report in and some other stuff as well about site health. So feel free, you don't need to spend a lot of money to get this information, either getting it for free or using a provider like us to actually generate a report for you. They're not expensive.
You get a lot of info with that. I love the tech audits that we do for people because it enables us to now be in a position to say, okay, cool, here's our our breakdown. Here's what we need to get done. But also, here's what you can do if you're on a low budget, you know what I mean? Or if you've got the expertise, like now you've got the blueprint of what needs to be cleaned up, take it and run with it. We're totally happy if you do that, right? Like it's okay. Um, and then speaking of like the extension, if we ever have a pre-sales call and we didn't get info about it beforehand, we didn't get time to run an audit, or, they didn't order one or something like that, and I'm on a call with somebody, I click that extension and I go, well, okay, right off the bat, I can tell you there's 17 different structure issues with your page. And that's not even doing a full audit. There's going to be more. There's going to, you know what I mean? There's going to be a different plan or we're going to have to put a plan in place. That's not so simple, but it's very easy to kind of just look at that real quick, whether it's a new site or a potential lead or something like that, and just be able to see real quick, well, you definitely have some problems here, and let's do an audit and look at the real data here, though, because this is just showing us that there's issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So just bringing this kind of part of the show to a close, I think that the only other thing I want to mention, unless you've got anything else, is just to say, we've mentioned a few things here to do with speed plugins and to do with, caching and CDNs and that kind of thing. Really, the only other plugin I install from regularly or as part of the stack, as part of our process for this, is obviously an SEO plugin to make sure that all of the meta boxes are in the right place, make sure that you can control the schema, make sure that the sitemap is generated, make sure it's linked from the robots file, all of those kind of things. Now they're again just good household cleanup items, and yeah, by all means, there's multiple ways that can happen. We normally use SEO Press Pro. People ask me why. The simple reason is I've found that SEO Press Pro gives me the most reliable results in the search results. I.e. the data we put in the website is more accurately reflected in the SERPs using SEO Press than anything else I've tried. But that said, we do run websites that have rank math. We run websites that run all-in-one SEO. That a lot of them are much of a muchness. I prefer SEO Press Pro.
It comes down to preference, I think. For all the premium plugins where they have a pro version that you'd actually pay some money for, they all essentially do the same thing. It's, I love SEO Press Pro. It's the one that we always use, like Pete mentioned. They've had a couple security vulnerabilities. I've had a couple bugs over the years. All plugins will eventually, but I've seen like 10 times more with rank math. So that's kind of why I go, well, okay. And then, we've gotten into some very interesting things with schema, with rank math, with sites that have rank math installed, and, only to find out a couple, revisions later that they've kind of put it back into proper things. So we just had more, kind of couple issues here and there. Your experience may differ. Use whatever's comfortable. The only thing I will ask is please just don't use the free basic Yoast plugin. It's so limited. You can use the free version of SEO Press. You can use the free version of rank math. Any of those are better than the free version of Yoast. The free version of Yoast is still going to do the same thing, except there's only so much that it will allow you to do. But comparing exactly what they do for this feature to that feature, they'll all be about the same. It's just a matter of which one works better, which one has the features included. And yeah, I'm ranting about something that hopefully everybody already owns.
Yeah. Well, and just to say, just make sure it's set up properly. Make sure that the sitemap is, the XML sitemap is generating. Make sure that the robots.txt file is generating and has a link to the sitemap in it. Make sure that that sitemap is registered with Google Search Console. Make sure that if it's a local business, that the local schema stuff is set in the back end of the SEO plugin. All of that, all of that stuff you can very easily do. You don't need external help from it. We should probably put together a checklist that's available on the website too, of all of this stuff, just so people can get hold of a list. But that's the kind of stuff that you need to, you can absolutely do. And look, all of this stuff, we kind of started on this foot anyway. All of this stuff's contextual. SEO is a game of, I call it a game of displacement. I know you refer to it slightly differently, but essentially for your client's website to appear in the top 10, in the top 3 of Google, you have to displace somebody that's already there. Now, if your client isn't in a massively active market, or it's then you don't need to be doing loads and loads of stuff. If, on the other hand, your client makes trainers or training shoes and you're going up against Nike, you're going to have to get your SEO game on. So, there's a whole spectrum there about how much effort and how or how little effort you're going to have to put into this. It's all comparable to the fight essentially that your particular client finds themselves in. But everything we've said, if you've got a website that doesn't have that stuff set, you go and sort that stuff out. You're going to see an improvement. It might not get you all the way, but you're going to see an improvement.
And if, when people say, no, make sure the schema is set, if that stuff is like daunting or overwhelming to you, I assure you it's not that bad. Load one of the plugins. They have a wizard that will walk you through. They'll hold your hand through it. You don't need to go into all the advanced stuff and start tweaking everything. And if you don't know what that is, then leave it alone. But go through the wizard at a bare minimum and just set your client up right. It's too easy not to.
Absolutely. Right. So have you got anything else to add to the kind of on-side things outside of those 3 or 4 areas that we just spoke about?
Specifically, no. I just think that I feel like we really need to keep drilling it into people's heads that this is approachable. You can handle this stuff. The more you do, the better your clients will like you for it, and the better footing you'll have when they launch their websites or when you take them over. And then if you're doing these basics, then you're primed, right, to actually go into doing advanced SEO, to work with a company like us to take, the knowledge that you or your team might have and start actually giving them some real benefits. The stuff that we're talking about is really just to make sure that they are at least making it to the dance, right? It's just not getting left behind, that you didn't forget anything. I see so many websites launch and people just didn't take any care of this. And it's just, I don't want to say it breaks my heart because it might turn into business for us. So, selfishly, keep doing it, everybody. But at the same time, it's like, if you want to be a respected professional, you can spend some time and you can do this stuff for your clients. And it's too easy not to.
I'm going to do the Columbo thing. I have thought of one more thing that we haven't mentioned: hosting. Making sure that you're on a reasonable host, that you're not sharing an IP address with hundreds or thousands of other websites that could be of explicit nature, let's say, but also could be of like a big data kind of load. If you're on a shared server and somebody decides to upload a whole load of videos on there and run ads to get people to look at their videos, then all of a sudden they're going to swamp the server resource from you as well. So you need to make sure that the hosting is fit for purpose. If you're using reseller hosting, that's fine. But again, just don't be aware of the hosting that you're on. I guess that's really the point. Again, people are coming to you as the web professional. You should have some kind of preferred hosting method set up in that. I've said I use a lot of Cloudways. I know you do as well, but you have a number of other companies that you use. I'm not recommending one particular one here, but please don't go and use cheap shared hosting that can be shared to hundreds or thousands of websites. Go and do a reverse IP lookup on a domain name or an IP address of your client if you're inheriting a site, to find out where their site is if you haven't built it, and what potentially needs to be done about it as well. So yeah, that was just an addendum that I did think of.
I feel like I've got a whole huge story just of something that occurred last night around that, but we've already gone long enough on this podcast. It's
well, we're not at phase 2 yet. Come on, DEFCON 2, here we come. Right, this won't take quite as long. So we do have conversations with clients. I have them in my agency, as well as we have them at SEO Hive, where people may come for a tech cleanup or a tech audit, and they're not in a place, the client isn't in a place to start paying for regular SEO yet. So what do they do? So we have 2 pieces of advice that we give them, but they all start from the same point. And that is, firstly, make a list of all of your services and all of the subparts of those services. And from there, they can then go and write the pillar pages and the cluster pages for those services, just like we mentioned earlier. So if the content doesn't exist, get the client to write it. If the website goes live and you know what, it has just a single services page that lists out the services that they do, right, job 1 for SEO which you don't have to pay for, is you're now going to go and write an individual page for each one of those services. And then when you've written those pages, you're going to break that down into the subparts of that service, and you're going to write another page for each one of those subparts. And you can just get them into WordPress. WordPress does all of that anyway. So you can get them into WordPress. If you've set your theme up properly so that the templates apply properly, then a client should be able to do that on their own. That's the first part of the plan. The second part of the plan is what you're then going to do is you're going to write down every question that a customer or a potential customer asks you about your products and services. What are the things that you have to answer multiple times, through the sales cycle? What are the things that you have to answer for every client you come across? What is the questions that crop up all the time? You're then going to write a blog post about all of those different questions. Just list them out, have a Google sheet, a ClickUp list. I don't care how you do it, but have a list of them and work through them and release one a week or one every few days, however quickly they can write them. And that becomes phase 2. And where you want to get advanced with this, and this isn't advanced like employing SEO advanced, this is just now a little more than writing some copy, is if any of those questions apply specifically to a product or a service or a cluster page that you've already written, then you're going to go and create some internal links, and you're going to link one to the other and then link it back again. And you're going to go through that process for every question that you then write a blog for. And that, in a nutshell, is the best thing that somebody that can't afford SEO from an external supplier can do, because it does two things. It makes sure that the website has an active structure, and it demonstrates to Google that the website is being used. So if you bring us a website that hasn't been touched for 3 years and expect us to do SEO on it, I mean, it's like turning the Titanic. We have to, it's like steering the Titanic with a lollipop stick. We have to convince Google that this website is now active again before it'll do anything else. So yeah, that's our advice to clients that can't afford SEO. There you go. Phase 2
Yeah,
is
and you were talking about advice to the clients. A lot of that you can do as the professional, but I'm not so sure you should do all of that if you don't have an agreement on, what you're doing. That's a lot of work right there. But you can coach your clients with this stuff, and you can guide them in the right direction. And if, we've all dealt with plenty of, small budget clients, and you love them. Not everybody has a huge budget to spend on this stuff. That's okay. But you can guide them and you can support them and you can help them do this. And two things will happen. One of two things will happen. They'll either do this and you can help them get some results. They'll put the work in and it'll take some time, or they will get very overwhelmed, and then they'll be primed to actually start paying for this. When they actually see how much work goes into it. It's not the hardest, but it does take time. And I'm not trying to say, show them how scary it is and then you can make money off of them. It's just putting them in a situation to make those decisions, because you're always going to bounce. I love doing things myself. I sometimes have to stop myself and go, dude, I just spent 3 days doing something I should have paid somebody like $100 for. Why did I do that? You know what I mean? And that's the same thing that they will realize eventually if their business is making money and they've got the budget for it.
There's this massive misconception that organic SEO is free simply because the clicks are free. Organic SEO always costs you, and it'll cost you in one of two ways, either in time or in money, paying people so that you don't have to spend the time, essentially. That's the truth behind it. So yeah, you're dead right. It's letting them see how much, in all honesty, I've found that some clients that have gone and sort of taken it on their own and then have come back to me 3 months, 6 months, a year later, whenever they've been in a place to start paying for this, when their business is in a better place, they're the ones that always appreciate a bit more what we're actually doing for them than people that just get it served up on a platter. But that's not every client's like that. What ultimately you're trying to do here is help people. And if they've not got the money to spend, great. Advise them how to spend the time, because they've got to do one or the other.
And once they realize they got to hire somebody.
Well, and if you're a small agency and you're, I'm not saying for 1 minute that you should then take this on. if you're an agency owner, agency of one, small agency, and you've got clients that are at this, at the point of saying, well, we can't afford SEO, don't you offer to copyright for them if that's not your jam, right? This isn't a place that you want to be inserting yourself unless that is what you can do. If you know of local copywriters that you can team up with, maybe you can start referring some work to each other. That might be the next step. Or of course you can come and use a white label provider like SEO Hive, where we can provide the copy for you. So there's kind of layers as to how you can gear this up. But yeah, just unlike the stuff we were talking about, like page speed and site structure and all that kind of stuff, this isn't a thing that you want to insert yourself in unless you can do it, because it can become a very much a labor of love.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far out of my comfort zone with things like that. Yeah, I love trying new things to a point.
I was going to say, and this man even used to work in journalism. Yeah, so there you go.
I have a degree in journalism. I've worked for many newspapers, and I hate writing. I hate it.
And that's how the press works, people.
That's true.
So look, I think we've pretty much covered it with this. I think there's been some nuggets of useful information.
Yeah,
I might have to listen to it a few times to find them.
Yeah, this was a bit of a longer one, but that's okay. I think this is one of those topics that people need to hear, and they just need to decide that they're willing to be comfortable trying these things and putting the work in. You know what I mean? Or spending the money. It's one or the other. But we have a lot of we talk with a lot of agencies, and they are, I don't want to say it's the most common thing. It's definitely not, but very often they're just worried about the budgets of their clients. They don't have the budgets for ongoing SEO, or they can only do a little bit here and there, or what it is. So I think that hopefully these ideas give you some things that you can do internally, or you can coach them without spending the money. And then it's probably better to try this and save the money and then invest it properly than just throwing it out the window at a random SEO campaign that you're not familiar with, or you don't even know if that's what you need, for instance. So, it's all about learning how to be comfortable with it.
Absolutely. And on that bombshell, I think it's time to end.
So. Is it lunchtime yet?
You got much on for the rest of the day? Oh, well, I was going to say, have you got much on for the rest of the day?
I'm hungry.
All right, everybody, we've got to stop because Jeff's hungry.
Yeah, right. You're ready to go have that beer before dinner or whatever right now. So go for it. It's okay.
It's 8:20 at night here. I'm committed to this show. What are you talking about?
Have you had dinner already? It's late. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. See, I wouldn't have had dinner yet. I'd be starving.
Already had the beer.
No wonder you're so giggly today.
Oh yes. Well, it's your rugged patch-based charm that's comes through the airwaves. What can I say? You're not wearing a hat. I'm all hot and flushed and stuff. And anyone that's listening to this via audio is now going to go and check out the YouTube video. No, seriously, thanks for listening. And if you need help with anything we've spoken about, hello@seohive.co. We can certainly point you in the right direction, or as I say, generate some reports for you, or whatever the help is you need with it. But you certainly can do SEO on a bit of a shoestring budget if you need to, and get out the gate. So we'll see you in the next show.
The WP SEO Show is brought to you by SEO Hive, your agency's proactive white label SEO partner. We understand that finding a reliable SEO supplier is key to ensuring you build stable monthly recurring revenue into your digital agency. At SEO Hive, we have a suite of products that will help you sell, scale and deliver your monthly SEO retainers, from our scout reports and one-off technical boosters, to our flagship local SEO and honeypot plans, all of which have clear pricing and monthly deliverables. If you want to explore how SEO Hive can help your agency deliver high-quality and reliable SEO agreements for your clients, you can find more information at seohive.co and schedule a call to discuss the next steps.